Hi, this is Ashish R. Bedekar, and welcome to my podcast, The ARB Show. I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, Dr. Jan. Dr. Jan is a sociologist, freelance writer, coach, speaker, artist, and adjunct associate professor in the Department of Sociology at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, CUNY. She also teaches at Baruch College and William Patterson University. She is a best selling author of over 60 books, published in over 35 languages. I read her fantastic book, How to Finish What You Started, and was inspired to reach out to her and invite her to be on the show. Welcome, Dr. Jan. I would like you to talk about the top 5 productivity tips that would really be useful for
Sure.
the audience.
Thank you so much, Ashish. I want to say hello to everyone. I'm Dr. Jan Yager, and it's thrilling to have an opportunity to talk about how to finish everything you start. That one book is in several languages already. It's actually being translated by the Indian publisher into Hindi, so hopefully we'll have a Hindi edition soon. But it's, of course, in English and Korean. It's being translated into Arabic. So the very first tip from the book is that you have to accept that there is an unfinishing epidemic going on and be aware of it. So many people are so involved in so many things that they aren't even realizing that something they started is languishing. So the very first tip is to think about the fact that it's an epidemic. Now, in sociology, we talk about the sociological imagination. And the sociological imagination has the perspective that if one person has that problem, it's a trouble. But if lots of people have it, it's a issue. It's a social issue. So I think that helps people to know that it's not just that individual. Why is this true? And Ashish, one of the reasons it's exciting, I think this is my 7th or 8th time management book. And what's exciting about having published and researched time management over decades is that I have the perspective that from my very first book, published by Prentice Hall in the mid-'80s, Creative Time Management, I have seen time and the management of time become a much bigger issue for so many more people. What happened in the 2000s? Social media. Social media. The last time I researched it, the number of times people looked at their phones, I think it was 50 or 100 times a day. I think it's tripled, quadrupled since that. So add on to social media and all the exciting things going on in the internet, it's become so much easier to start a project and put it aside. So the first thing is to realize that this is an issue.
Right.
The second thing is, go ahead.
I was just saying that, as they say, that the first step for any solution is acknowledgement of the problem, right? And when you mentioned about social media, in fact, I'm just trying out a new experiment that is to really block all social media except LinkedIn during my office working time, right? And and it's been just 2-3 days, but I feel you can really sense the the longing for checking out YouTube once in a while, but also the realization that there are some small minutes which you kind of spend throughout the day, but if you all stack them together, that would come to a pretty big time, right? But if you kind of have a focused kind of story, you kind of really improve the quality of work. And as many people say, we are in the dopamine era, right? Wherein we are always addicted for the next big shiny thing. Yeah.
Yes,
Over
sure.
to you again.
Yes, sure. And now the second concept from How to Finish Everything You Start, and what's been, I totally agree with you about LinkedIn. What's interesting is that I just recently did a presentation on how to promote your book, because I have a book on that, and I've spent my life writing books, and it's so important to talk about them. But one of the things I mentioned in that talk was that right now, my main way of getting exposure is LinkedIn. So ironically, Ashish, my goal for 2024 and 2025 going forward and beyond, because hopefully your podcast is going to be listened to forever, is to go back to putting more time into Twitter, now called X, and to make those videos and get them on Instagram and YouTube. So, so it's ironic that I have, because of my career goals, a little bit of a different perspective than you. But I find LinkedIn an excellent source of information, of connecting. But you have to be careful that it doesn't, take up start to take up more time than what you're devoting to your priority projects. So the second tip from How to Finish Everything You Start, and by the way, to prepare for our talk today, I actually looked at my book again, which of course I researched and wrote it, and refer to it a lot in my presentations and coaching, but it was fun to revisit it. Is that one of the top reasons in those I've researched, 250 people anonymously sharing, what's your top issue? Procrastination was one of the biggest reasons people didn't finish. And by the way, in the book, I have 22 possible reasons that someone isn't finishing a project, but by far the biggest obstacle is procrastination. And I discuss it, I even have a whole chapter on it in How to Finish Everything You Start, because it's so important to understand procrastination. Most people just throw up their hands, they just don't want to face it. They get flustered over it. They just label themselves, oh, I procrastinate. But you can self-talk, you can apply self-therapy. If necessary, you can talk to a professional who can help you with this problem, because it can really sabotage you. And what I found so fascinating, as you mentioned, I've published over 60 books. Well, when I started researching and writing this book, I think I was at 50 books, but I just found my own productivity skyrocketing, because it helped me to go back and look at some of the projects I hadn't finished. And this ties in with one of the reasons people procrastinate and don't finish projects. I had a wonderful book idea, and it was called Fairy Tale Sequels. And I wrote 2 books. No, I actually wrote 3 volumes of the series in the late 80s, when my older son, who's now 38, was 4 or 5 years old. And one of the reasons, and I had even forgotten this, but one of the reasons I did this is that every time I told him a fairy tale, like the 3 Little Pigs, Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, and Little Red Riding Hood, he would say, so what happened next? So I created a sequel, but I never published the books. So researching How to Finish Everything You Start, I went back into those books and I said, what happened? And I realized that I had shown them to just a few people, and unfortunately, the feedback was worded in a way, rather than inspiring me, it created fear. And that I have found is one of the biggest reasons people procrastinate on finishing a project. They're afraid of what's going to happen, because if you don't finish, you can't be criticized. If you don't finish that report, your boss can't say, you know, you should have done this, that, or the other thing. So understanding that fear was behind this, I said, I'm not going to let that stop me. And I looked at the books again, and I got all excited, rewrote them, and 2 of the volumes I was able to actually publish in the last few months. So now fear of failure is behind procrastination, but the fear of success, it's not just fear of failure. Because let's say the project you're putting off, or the effort you're putting off, it's something you did well at before. So you can worry that, wow, if I had all this pressure on me because I did this so well, are they going to expect more from me? So what I share in the chapter on procrastination is, stop beating yourself up if you procrastinate. Instead, see procrastination as information. Now, what can procrastination be telling you? Maybe you shouldn't be doing that in the first place. My ex-fiance postponed our wedding, and 2 years after he postponed it, we broke up. So some people would say, oh, he was procrastinating on getting married. Well, guess what? It was the best thing that happened to both of us. I went on to find my wonderful husband and have children and a wonderful life. So isn't it good that instead of just, not, because one of my favorite chapters, and I'll talk about that later in the book, is about putting things off and not finishing for the right reasons. Another reason people procrastinate is boredom. Sometimes you shouldn't even be doing that task. And that leads to the third top idea from how to finish everything you start. Become a better delegator. Sometimes you're not finishing projects because either you shouldn't be doing the project in the first place, or there are parts of the project that you should be farming out to other people. Today, it's not just other people. It's one of the most controversial and hot topics in the business world, and even the academic world today, AI. But even before AI, artificial intelligence, we had the ability to automate tasks and delegate to a system, or right now my favorite piece of equipment is, my new best friend is my scanner, because I got a high-speed scanner so I could scan literally thousands of pages I scan into 4 different places, and I'm able to recycle the paper. So that's important, that that certain parts of a project should either be delegated to someone or the entire project. One of the hardest things for entrepreneurs, including myself, is to trust, select, and pass on certain tasks to others so you can keep yourself freed up for the bigger issues. So that's a very important piece of information if you're failing to finish. I'd love to hear some input from you, Ashish, before I go to number 4.
Yeah, so I was just reflecting on that. So would you say that for if you're working in teams, and if you work on collaborative documentation, let's say Google Docs, or if you use Slack or things like that, the chances of procrastination or projects getting held up or output getting held up is reduced, because if you start something but there is someone to kind of pick up the slack and continue on it. Would that be a fair statement to make?
Well, coincidentally, number 4 is deadlines, and that fits in with what you're saying. One of the biggest challenges when you work in teams is, too often, if you have a team of 4 or 5, there's going to be 1 or 2 people who don't keep up with the work, or maybe one who takes over, and maybe not in even a good way, but is doing too many of the tasks that should be, shared among everyone. So teams can be a pro or a con. You really have to keep up with the team. Deadlines, that was another important chapter in How to Finish Everything You Start. There's a whole chapter on rethinking deadlines. Think of the word deadline. It's not a happy word, and yet it's really a great concept. So if you're in a team, and we'll talk about a team first, but then as an individual, in terms of helping you to finish projects, create mini deadlines. Also, decide if your team is going to work on the whole task together, or if you're going to divide it up and then have everyone pool what they've done. So it's very important to have those mini deadlines. Sometimes, there was a few years ago, right now, I think the pandemic stopped all the talk about meetings that were worthless, because sadly, for those of us who were locked down, we couldn't even have face-to-face meetings. We had to go to Zoom, which is fabulous. I wish I had thought of Zoom. It's such a great tool for all of us. But it's useful to have a meeting, like a weekly meeting or a bi-weekly meeting, so your team has accountability. And then going to the individual, we need to give ourselves mini deadlines. Most of the time, for major projects, someone's going to say, I need that in 2 months, and give you a date. Or I need that, we got to make the fall selling season, so I have to have it by this date. But it's up to you to create those mini deadlines, so you're not doing. When I did my training manual for IT professionals, I learned about the concept in IT called the death march. And that's where someone tries to make that deadline that was decided on without the mini deadlines, and they literally, stop sleeping, eating, stay at the office, and, it just can not only have physical consequences, but, your family might not see you for 2 weeks. So deadlines are a great way to work better with a team and on your own to get more projects finished.
Got it. So when you talk of Zoom or such collaborative things, and you rightly mentioned that in a team you would have some superstars who really kind of overachieve and some laggards. But at a personal basis or as an individual, how do you beat procrastination, or how do you any tips which you would like to share? For example, it could be as easy as maybe write down what you need to achieve at start of the day, or reflect sure. Something like that.
Well, when I was early on, even before my first time management book, I did an article for one of the major magazines on your best ideas. And I had the luxury of the good fortune to interview the great Isaac Asimov, who was a genius. And by the time he passed away, he had published over 300 books. makes me look like I have a long way to go with just 60. And I asked him, how are you so productive? And he shared with me, this is before computers, that he had several typewriters in his apartment. And in each typewriter was a different project. And if he got stalled on one, he went to another project. So from that, I created the concept of creative time management, creative procrastination. Why is it creative? Because you're going from one priority project to another. Now, you have to be careful that you do finish each of those projects, but you do it in a different order. So if you're stalled on, let's say you're doing a report and you can't write the introduction, so maybe you'll jump to doing the bibliography. Or if you need to make sales calls and you're kind of feeling a little tired, and finishing those sales calls is your goal for the day, well, maybe you'll take a break, but you'll have a break that's, you give yourself a time limit, like, oh, for an hour, I'm going to go on LinkedIn and just relax, and then I'm going to go back to it. So I think the big issue is control. I happen to really like my at-a-glance planner. And the reason why I like it so much is that it has 15-minute increments up until 9:45 at night, but you can write in, afterwards. And then it's interesting because Saturday has not as quick, mostly increments, but then Sunday is open. So whoever created the planner is kind of telling you that they want you to take, do a few less business things on Sunday. So writing things down really helps. And in my research and work with people over the years, one of the biggest mistakes people make about to-do lists that doesn't help them to get the best value out of a to-do list is make sure you move the tasks to the next day if you didn't get to it. Sometimes there's magical thinking. If you just write it down, it's getting done. So that's a very important concept. The reward system helps, but make sure it's a reward that's really going to motivate you. Don't reward yourself if you finish this report by doing the dishes. If I finish this report, I'm going to call that friend that I haven't spoken to in a while, and I know he or she loves to chat. So, I won't feel guilty about it because I got my work done. And going back to what we said about accountability, just one of the reasons coaching is such a wonderful investment for people is that it's so easy to kind of put off for yourself what you need to do. But if you have, whether it's a weekly or a monthly, I happen to be in 2 groups that meet once a month, and we all share, what are we going to hope to accomplish in our work in the next month, so that when you see them again, you can check in, oh, I made progress, or I need some more encouragement. And then my last tip of the 5 top ideas from the book, but as you know from reading all the wonderful feedback about the book at the online sellers, Amazon, and also LinkedIn, there's so many ideas. And this, I may tear up when I tell you about this, because I've never publicly shared why I wrote chapter 12. And chapter 12 is the most important chapter in the book. It's called The Exception That Proves the Rule When Failing to Finish is a Good Thing. And it encourages people to not finish for the right reasons, not because of procrastination, but they decide they shouldn't do it. And the reason why I'm going to tear up is that when I was researching and writing the book, three different people, people I knew, and not close people, but people I knew through my network, their children, adult children, committed suicide. And
So
and
sorry
I
to hear
said to
that.
myself, I cannot publish a book about how to finish everything you start without saying there are some things you shouldn't finish, because as a sociologist and someone who's taught social deviance, and it's a terrible term, social deviance, I think social problems is a better term, but I've researched and written and spoken about suicide. Every single person who had tried to commit suicide and didn't finish and survived, they all are so grateful. It's a turning point in their life. Um, so the concept of taking control of what we finish is so powerful. It shouldn't be a knee-jerk thing. Each thing we're doing, we need to think about whether it's in your personal life or in your work life. And, it's been so gratifying to see the book is the #1 bestseller in Kindle India for so many months, and how the audiobook has taken off in America in an amazing way, that my narrator actually texted me just the other day. She said, my husband told me I got this deposit for the audiobook. I can't believe it. It's from your book. I said, well, I'm really glad that, she thanked me for narrating it. And, so it's been very gratifying, and I'm excited. I'm working on a new time management book, and that's been very gratifying.
Right.
So
And as I mentioned in my LinkedIn message to you, I found the book extremely practical and crisp and to the point. And in fact, one of the points mentioned in the book is, if you can finish it in a minute, please do it, right? And when I finished the book, I was thinking, oh, why don't I invite Dr. Jan to the podcast? So let me do it tomorrow. Then I said, it doesn't take that long, right? All it takes is to write a message, and let's hope that she responds. So I immediately after finishing the book, that was the first thing which I did. So great,
right.
thanks, Dr. Jan. This really gives a great perspective.
Oh,
And
sure. And I just want to quickly tell everyone, please visit my main website, drjanyager.com. Yager is Yager. I have a contact us place. I have a newsletter, sign up. I have a mailing list, sign up. I'd love to hear from everyone, and they'll find out about this book and lots of other books. There's also free blogs on time management and other topics. And this is wonderful, because I think I told you I've spent 5 weeks in India over the years, and it's a wonderful country, and I can't wait to get back there.
great. Thanks again. And thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in. Do subscribe, share, and like the podcast. Bye for now. Talk to you soon.